Hi, everybody. My name is Ann Espuelas, and we're broadcasting live from FAMM on February 13th, 2023, which is the day before Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day. If you need to hear that, happy Valentine's Day. I'm here today to talk with two amazing men, Lee Horton and Dennis Horton. They're brothers. And 2 years ago, on February 12th, they got clemency on life sentences from the governor of Pennsylvania after serving 28 years in prison. 2 days more than 2 years living in freedom. And we thought, who better to talk with us about second chances? Particularly today, we're going to talk about the second chance that comes in the form of clemency, because you all are fortunately very familiar with that. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about how clemency works in Pennsylvania and elsewhere. But before I do that, I thought I'd give a little introduction. First of all, if you're watching, you probably already know this is part of our series called Free to Succeed, where we focus on people who've gotten second chances in the form of sentencing reform or compassionate release or clemency, to really make the point clear that people who get second chances can come out and live great, amazing lives, making their families stronger, making their communities safer. And we're going to just pound that message home until those alarmist headlines change, because we really think second chances are important, and they're a huge part of our work here at FAMM. And so I want to also hear a little bit, if you guys can talk a little bit about who you are. Dennis, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah. So, in this moment right now, I am a fiance. I am a son. I am a brother of many siblings, including Lee. I am an advocate on behalf of those, many of those who still are behind gates and walls that are serving life sentences. I am an advocate for individuals who are behind gates and walls, that are not getting the much needed, um, positive self-development programming that they should be entitled to, that our community think that's happening, and in some cases it is, and then in a lot of cases it's not. um, um, and I'm just, I'm someone out here that is trying to make a difference in whatever way I can, from politics, again, to advocating on behalf of those that are still on the inside.
That's a full plate. That's a full plate, Dennis. And you grew up in Philadelphia, right?
Yes, I'm a
Both of you,
Philadelphia.
both of
I'm
you
a
in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Yes, I'm a Philadelphia native. You know, uh, this is where I currently live today.
Mm-hmm.
I love Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a great city, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we're like one of those big cities, not without its problems. And my hope is, and what I do is try to be a part of the solutions in a lot of those problems.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's fantastic. And Lee, talk a little bit about what you're doing today. And also, I mean, somebody's got to talk about the what happened last night to Pennsylvania. I don't know who wants to talk about the Eagles.
Well, they made it all the way to the top of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you don't make it over, but we'll have a better chance. We'll have a better a year next year. I'm still a fan. I'm not going to not be a fan because they lost. I'm real proud of the Eagles. I'm glad they got to all the way to where they got to. I mean, that's it. That in and of itself is an accomplishment.
Yeah.
I mean, you go away and you think it kind of reminds me of when my brother and I were in prison and we were trying to fight to come home, and we would file that brief and we knew we had the evidence, and it would go to the courts and they would send that denial back. And we would go away a little sad, but then we would bounce right back. We had a little resiliency. And when I see the Eagles, that's what I see is resiliency. I see them, they bounce back every single time, and they come back out and they play as hard as they can play. And you can't knock them for that.
You can't. Well, good. I like that attitude. All right. So Lee, talk a little bit about what you're doing now.
All right. Well, I'm my first thing, what I'm doing is being free. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing that to the fullest. I'm being free. I'm enjoying my life. I'm out here in society, but right now, I'm working for an organization called Shining Light, and we do facilitating with my brother and actually Naomi Blunt, who also came home on commutation. We all work for this organization doing programming and facilities in institutions, prisons around the country. We zoom in and we do facilitation with individuals who are in those. We actually did a workshop with some individuals in the hole in North Dakota. So we do that. We also, my brother and I, we was trained inside to be wellness recovery action plan facilitators. So we came home, and now we actually do what they consider RAP. We do RAP seminars out here in society. We've done those, over the last 2 years. We started doing that immediately when we came home. We also just finished working with, the Fetterman campaign for the United States Senate. That was a success. So we're going on now to try to work with some other politicians to try to help them get elected. Looking at some city council folks and some judges, people who were running for judgeships. We also, once a month, we go up to the training academy for the DOC to do seminars with staff members there to kind of try to demonstrate what the experience is like for individuals who are incarcerated and try to help them to see a better way of treating inmates so they can have a better outcome. We talk about trauma. We talk about our experience adjusting to prison, and we talk about, the officers' experiences interacting with individuals, and look for a way that, help them to understand how to diffuse situations rather than escalate.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And it's a few other things that we do. We're also doing RAP with young folks in community centers and transitional housing and recreation centers, community programs and things like that within the city as a way to try to contribute to stopping the violence that's going on. And as my brother say, we really do a lot of advocating for individuals inside, as far as, everything from trying to help individuals obtain attorneys to, interacting with the border pardons or people close to the border pardons to try to help people get information, help people to get letters for, commutation and references and all that kind of stuff. And anything that most of the time anybody that's incarcerated needs that can help them to progress forward.
That's great. That's great. Well, they're lucky to have you. I mean, you guys haven't stopped since you left prison. It doesn't sound like you've taken one single day off.
No, we actually have it.
I believe it. I believe it. You need to take a vacation. But I wanted to ask you too, because there are a lot of people watching, family members who have people in prison for very long sentences, and they look at you and they see what you're doing and what you just told us about yourself. And they may feel, for a lot of reasons, they don't have any hope. But it makes me think about something. I think, Lee, you told us such an interesting description of your childhood, the way where you came from. If you can, one of you wants to talk a little bit about that. I think a lot of people could relate to that.
All right. I mean, I can go into it. I mean, we was raised in a family where, number one, you always kept moving forward. We wasn't like, we didn't get complacent. We wasn't able to really complain. We just didn't see a thing as something that was preventing us from doing anything. We was always taught to try our hardest. My mom used to always say, nothing beats a failure but a try. You know what I'm saying? So that always, we talked about this, my brother and I, the whole time we were incarcerated. Nothing beats a failure but a try. You got to keep trying. We was raised with a grandmother who took care of everybody. My mom took care of everybody. We always had people living in our house that wasn't really related to us. They took everybody in, and and for us, at the root of our upbringing was to overcome. We was always taught to overcome, never to see anything as an obstacle. And at the time back then when I was growing up, I never really paid attention to any of that. I didn't see it as useful information then. It took a long time, and there's a whole lot of other stuff in between. My grandma was heavily on doing for yourself, not letting anything hold you back and not depending on others to get you what you needed in life. And not unless you were actually doing something for yourself. She never said not to ask for help. She was strong on you could ask for help, but don't sit around and wait for somebody else to do something for you that you can do for yourself. And
Dennis, what did she say? Didn't your grandmother tell you something when you all were in prison that really stuck with you?
Yeah, when we were in prison for probably like the first few years we was in prison, our grandma, of course, she was the elder in the family, and we were wanting to see her. We were really close growing up with our grandmother, and so we was kind of talking to our mother to bring her up to see us because we knew she was old, you know what I mean, and we didn't know how long we would have with her. So my mom eventually, on one of her good days, brought our grandmother to visit with us. And I remember when my grandma came in the visiting room, they called us down, and we were so happy to see her. We hugged her, sat down. And my brother and I, before she can get a word out, we both was he on one side, I'm on the other side, and we're talking about how bad prison was, and telling her grandma, this prison is bad. It's just a cold place. The men here are cold-hearted. The guards are cold-hearted. Nobody care about anything. It's just a dark place, and and we went on like that. We were playing tag team, trying to paint the worst picture we possibly could of prison because we wanted to draw sympathy. Listen, it was very difficult, but we wanted to draw sympathy. That was our goal. And she listened to us probably for the better part of almost 45 minutes. And then after we were talked out pretty much, she turned to us and she said, because she called us baby, even though we were grown men, she still called us baby. She said, baby, she said, listen, you are there. Why don't you do something to help somebody? Do something to make a difference. And she said, listen, we know you neither one of you didn't commit the crime that you're in prison for. But a man died. Is a man that's dead in this equation. He's gone. He's never coming back. Why don't you do something to make a difference in his name? And my brother and I, we looked at each other like, we're innocent. This is what we're not saying she's just talking, but this is what we're saying. We gave each other, we made eye contact. I knew what he was thinking and he knew what I was thinking, and then she went on and she said, listen, don't worry about getting out of prison. Let God take care of that. Just do what you can do right now and make a difference in somebody's life while you're there. And we just, thought it was the strangest thing. And then she went on to say, listen, if it's dark in there, then light it up with hope. You know what I mean? And if it's cold, heat it up with love. And my brother and I, we looked at each other and, I can tell you exactly what we were thinking. Grandmom has lost her mind. How are we going to heat it up with love with these guys in here? You know what I mean? Light it up with hope. With who? This is what we were thinking at the time. But as the years, the visit ended, we were kind of a little just disappointed and down, when our grandmom left. But years later, what she said to us that night would resonate. And we would begin to do exactly what she suggested. And we began to work with others and help others. And first we had to educate ourselves, and then we begin to help others find their way, their purpose, help to send them back home, better individuals. And, and we just, and we helped, we did legal work for individuals to help them to get free, and that's kind of what we stepped into. We became.
If I can just jump in, I can say this though. When we left that visit, what we was thinking to ourselves is, what is this lady talking about? What about us? I don't think she understood one word we said. That was my exact words to him. When we was walking down that walkway, going back to the block, I said, I don't think she understood one word we said. Talking about lighting up, light it up with hope and heat it up with love. What is she talking about? What does that mean? I was like, what do it even mean?
Grandmothers were so misunderstood. So misunderstood. All right. So that is an amazing story. You're such a good storyteller. Both of you great storytellers. I want to stop here though in the show, because now that everybody listening and watching gets a sense of who you are, I want to talk about how you got out, because let's imagine, we don't have to imagine, but clemency is unbelievably difficult to get. Very, very difficult to get. So it's not like, these guys said, hey, we want clemency, and then they got it. So I want to talk a little bit for people who may be interested and need to know how clemency works, especially in Pennsylvania. And I want everybody watching to imagine if these two people who now a little bit better were still inside.
But before we start, we would be remiss if we, first of all, we didn't thank the ex-governor Tom Wolf. For signing our clemency papers. That's number one. And we would also be remiss if we didn't thank John Fetterman for being one of our biggest advocates. And also, in that process, we would be remiss if we didn't thank the Board of Pardons for voting for us. And of course, we definitely have to thank FAMM, for being on the front lines and supporting us, and all the other, organizations and entities that supported us to help to see us get home and back to see us obtain our freedom.
Well, thank you for saying that, Dennis. And a big part of FAMM's work is second chances. So we're in it for the long haul. And thank you for those thank yous to the other people. So you mentioned a couple things in what you just said, Dennis, that I don't think everybody knows, like the Board of Pardons and how that works, because it's quite a complicated process. So I'm reading from some things here to make sure I get it straight. But so when we talk about clemency, executive clemency, we're in terms of the states, we're talking about the governor giving clemency. In the United States, it's the president. So in Pennsylvania, they don't call it clemency, they call it commutation. So a commutation reduces a prison sentence in whole or in part.
Right.
So out there, if you're wondering how to do it, there are many steps to it, and I'm going to go through them very briefly, but some FAMM people are going to be posting them in the comments right now. We have them. This whole process is written out on our website, and I hope people who are interested go. And not just about Pennsylvania, but we have clemency work in other states. You can also poke around the website and see what you can find. But so the first thing is fill out an application.
Yes.
And this application, you guys can probably speak to this. It's not just like filling in one sheet of paper and It requires a ton of documentation, a lot of information, much of which is really hard for people in prison to get a hold of, right?
Hard for you to get a hold of, but you just got to do the best you can. And, but I would advise that try to get the documentation first. Look over your application, and it's an application. You're applying for commutation, so it's like anything else. You have to get an interview,
right?
So you want to make your application look. You don't want it to be too complicated. You don't want it to be too fancy. You want it to be simple and easy to understand. But you want to go in depth in what you put into that application.
Good point. Okay, so then once you've done all that, you send the application to the Board of Pardons, which is in Harrisburg, which is the capital of Pennsylvania, and they review it for completeness. And then at that time, there are other people who can chime in on your application: the prosecutor, the judge, the prison system, the DOC. So that all happens too. And then there is this group in Pennsylvania called the Board of Pardons, and they do a merit review. The Board of Pardons has 5 members to it, and they consider many, many factors, and they vote on whether the application should keep going down the line of the process or just stop right there. And then they vote, and people incarcerated with life sentences or violent convictions need 3 votes to go forward. Everyone else needs 2 votes.
The majority, yes.
No, they need 5 votes.
No, at this point, no.
For the merit hearing.
For the merit review. Okay, you are merit. Okay,
I know what you're talking about. We'll get to that, Lee, because that happens too.
Right. They only need a majority.
They only need a majority. Exactly. So then the Board of Pardons prints a notice of upcoming hearings in the local newspaper where the crime occurred. Victims are notified. Then there is a public hearing in Harrisburg. People supporting and opposing a clemency application each get 15 minutes to make their cases, 30 minutes in death penalty cases. The Board of Pardon members may ask questions and victims may give secret written input. Okay, then the Board of Pardons goes back to the application and reviews it again. And the 5 members meet privately, have their discussion. And then, just as you said, Lee, this is the point where people with life sentences or violent convictions need a unanimous vote. All 5 members have to vote. Everyone else needs 3 votes. If enough people vote yes, you're almost at the finish line. That goes to the board. What the Board of Pardons decided goes to the governor. And then the governor reviews the application. And if the governor grants the commutation, the person gets out of prison early. If denied, a person can reapply when circumstances change or in 1 to 2 years. Did I get all that right?
Yep, you got everything right.
All right.
Yeah.
So this is really important. I'm going to say it now and I'll say it again at the end of the show. The reason clemency is so important, it's so arduous and so tedious and really, it just sounds like a huge mountain. How am I going to climb this mountain? Well, for now, at least, it's pretty much all you got in Pennsylvania. So we have to, FAMM is pushing to make the process less difficult and also used more broadly.
Right.
So there are many ways we can do that. So I want to ask, maybe just one of you wants to say this, or both of you, if you like, what was the process like for you? How many times did you apply? Were there, if you could just speak briefly on this, because I actually think you could write a book. Both of you could write a book about even just this part, my application for clemency, but just talk briefly about it now. Dennis, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I can start. First of all, the process, it was a pretty long process in the sense that it took at least 3 years. You know what I mean?
And what year in your imprisonment did you decide to do it?
We filed it, if I'm not mistaken, like 2016, right? No, late 2017, late 2016.
How many years had you been in? 20.
We didn't get to see him until 2019.
So that's you had been in quite a while.
Yeah. So 3 years it took the process to get there. You know what I mean? And then after we went through that process, because like Lee said earlier, and you got to file an application. Once you file
wait, hold on. I'm curious. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm curious. What made you apply then and not before?
Well, let me just say this. Thank you for asking that. That's a great question. Initially, we remember most people that's been in for a long time, they remember when we had, governors, like Rendell and them that, in order for you to come before them, it was mandatory for you to have like 35 years in and that kind of time. We were nowhere near that kind of time, but the Board of Pardons had since changed then, and that's kind of necessitated us to file. And particularly we started working with some, a university, a Penn professor named Kathleen Brown. She kind of, helped us to believe that we can file, with the 25 years we had at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And she believed, we had a great case to make, that we had great records, and that there was a possibility that we can actually get through.
25 years though, Dennis. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, at that, but we knew individuals that had, at least 10, 12 more years than we did, and they were getting denied. So it was sort of like, what was the point for us to even file?
Yeah.
She convinced us that we could, she convinced us to believe that we can get through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so we did file, and she worked with us, and we filed. And in 2019, we wound up getting denied.
But I think that you may be leaving one little small thing out.
Sure, Lee, go ahead.
And she did convince us that we could actually get through, but the person that actually convinced us to file was an individual named Robert Hammond, who was actually a staff member in the DOC. He had watched us for several years, and one day he asked us to come in his office, and he asked us what were we doing in prison. And this is not unlike a lot of men who are filed for commutation. It's not, they don't just do it because they want to do it. They do it because somebody inspired them to do it. Maybe a staff member in the DOC or somebody, you know, that was close to him or something like that. But this individual asked us what we was doing in prison, and we told him what we was. He said, "I know your charges. I have your record. What are you doing in prison? It's clear you guys don't deserve to be, shouldn't be here. Why don't you file for commutation?" We told him about fighting our case, about our innocence, all of that. And he said, "Well, why don't you just file for commutation?" And actually, in the beginning, my brother and I laughed because we didn't believe that commutation was a viable avenue for us to come home. You know, we had seen, like he said, all before Wolf, Governor Wolf came in office, Lieutenant Governor, the Attorney General Shapiro, any of these individuals came in to office. Last 30 years before, it was very few people who got through commutation. And we knew with our kind of case that it would have been very hard for us to go through. So he got a promotion, went to central office for the DOC and came back on a visit. And he asked us, did we file? And we said we hadn't filed. And then he encouraged us to file. And he's the one who introduced us to Miss Kathleen Brown, Dr. Kathleen Brown.
Yeah.
And he came to see us, and then coming and see us, that's when we told our story. And she said, "Well, why don't you file a first actual innocence application?" And, you know, and she said, "You'll get through. I believe that you have the kind of case that can actually make it." And as my brother was saying, we made it through.
And how many times did you apply?
Once.
Once. Okay. And you were talking about this before the show, those interviews, what was the process like? Was it grueling? Was it, you know?
Let me just say this.
For
us, it was grueling. I mean, keep in mind that, you know, we were going in there, you know, arguing, you know, the first actual innocence commutation application. That was a little different from individuals who were going in there saying, "Hey, listen, I did it. I'm asking for a second chance. This is who I am today. I'm not the individual that committed the crime. I'm remorseful and I've changed. And I'm really throwing myself at the mercy of this board because I have no other way out. So, you know what I mean? I'm asking you to give me a second chance." That's the normal way. You know what I mean? But we went in there and we asked, you know what I mean, for a second chance to be released, but we were innocent. And so that process, you know, so it caused us to go, you know, to do hours and hours and hours of interviewing because they wanted to make sure that, you know what I mean, if, you know, we got these two men coming before us to saying they're innocent, then we gotta do a thorough job. You know, this is unlike any other situation that came before us before. This is setting precedent.
Okay. And can you talk about, I didn't mention this when I was explaining how the process works, but not just for you, but in general, the time between when the Board of Pardons gives their recommendation and the governor maybe sign the application or not, that can vary, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. I mean, it's a matter of how long the governor takes.
Yeah.
An application. People don't, you have to realize he does a review. I mean, like you said, the process is arduous. It's not an easy process because from beginning to end, you do a lot of in-between things to get to from point A to point B to point C to point D until you get to that hearing, until you get to the merit hearing, and then until you get to that hearing. You do a lot of things in between those things. And just to go back a minute, we did only apply once, but I want people to understand that when I say, and I talk about not giving up, we applied once, but the first time we went up, we got denied. And then we applied again, but we applied in the form of a reconsideration.
Okay.
We filed for reconsideration, and we got denied again. And then we filed a second reconsideration, and we got held under advisement. And then we had to go before the board, lay our whole case out with any kind of everything that was in our trial and evidence and other things and stuff like that. And we fought for months before the board before they finally, had another hearing for us and recommended us. So, but the point I wanted to make with that is that at the time we got denied that first time in 2019, right after that, my mom passed. My mom passed away. She had been fighting with us for all these years, and she passed away. But we didn't give up. And I know everything in us was telling us not to even apply again, not to even file for reconsideration, just to let it go. And I know so many people who've done that, who've just let it go because it's painful to be denied when you know.
Yeah.
And when you've been in prison 35, 40 years and you file for commutation and your record says that you should be a prime candidate and that they should grant you commutation, you know, but there's so many arbitrary things involved and you don't get it. And then you don't want to go back again. You don't want to go through that again.
Yeah, can I touch on that real quick, Lee, before we move on?
Yeah.
I just want to touch on, add to what Lee is saying is that, you know, and I'm not at the same time, I understand, you know, victims and, you know, the things that they must go through when you go to a application for commutation, because now everything comes back up all over again.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the person who may have done this when they were in their early 20s or late teens, you know, we talking about 18, 19 years old, and now they're like 60 something years old today. And it's like reliving this thing all over again. It's like a trial, believe it or not. Going through that process is like a trial all over again. And it, like Lee said, it brings up so much old and past stuff and a lot of pain. And then the thing is to go through that, and it's sort of like to open, you know, to cut your body open and open yourself up. And the thing is, and to get denied, it's so painful and so difficult. And we've seen first of all, we were distraught. So we've seen individuals come back prior to us, years prior to, and get denied, and just see these folks. Some of them couldn't make it back. Yeah, that's how painful and difficult it is.
Ugh.
Devastating. It's devastating.
Yeah. Well, you paint a really clear picture. Okay. So I want to move on from clemency. I think we made it a good picture. So I want to talk about these 4 questions. The first one is, what does a second chance mean to you? And I think we get a good sense of that already, but I just want to get a little more personal, if you don't mind. Because again, like, it's really hard to imagine both of you still in prison. You were supposed to die in prison. It's really hard to imagine that. So, okay. Since you've been back, one of you answer this. You get to pick who. What's one of your favorite days since you've been released?
Oh, I can answer that.
Okay.
My favorite days is, when me and my fiance, walk the trails when it's nice and quiet. And sometimes, we do it in the winter. We did it in the summer. We did it in the spring. And the spring and summer is so beautiful, so peaceful, so quiet, so serene. You know what I mean? Right near the water, and just like, it's just such because I'm, everything around me, I was used to noise for 28 years, never had a moment's peace. And it feels so peaceful. And in the wintertime, I mean, it's just like, even though it may be cold and the air may be just like crisp, it is so beautiful and just such a great feeling. So that is my quiet time. And most of the time that's early in the morning, before everyone get up and get ready to go to work.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. Lee, what is the smallest, most ordinary thing in life, in the world, that makes you happy now that you're free?
The most ordinary thing, not being seen when I don't want to be seen.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more.
I mean, I could be in my room and I have privacy and nobody's watching me. Nobody can see me. I'm just there by myself with my thoughts, with my person, and I'm free from, any kind of, somebody or eyes peering at me or cameras looking at me or anything like that. And, but I have to add to that, also with that, goes hand in hand with that, is the ability to be in darkness. In prison, you can never escape the lights. There's lights all the time. When you go to sleep, the room is never fully dark. So you sleep with lights on in your face all the time. But in prison, you don't have a right not to be seen. And so I can walk around my house and nobody's here looking at me.
Right.
It takes away something, and it makes you feel better about yourself, but feel better overall. I always felt uneasy, because I always thought that somebody was watching me. Even if I couldn't see them, I knew that somebody was actually watching me.
Wow. I never thought of that, Lee. Wow. Yeah. That's a great answer. Okay. So now I want to talk a little bit about, okay, I got one more question, and you can both answer this if you want, but what's something that was denied to you every single day for 28 years that you didn't oh, I'm sorry, did I ask you that? No, that you didn't realize you missed. So Lee, it might have been darkness and not being seen, but something else, something that you did, once you got out, you were like, wow, how could I have lived all those years without this?
Well, I know for me, I know, and I got to say this quickly, being outside at night. You know, people out here in society take for granted, you know, we're locked in at 9 o'clock, we're inside the cell. At 8 o'clock, you know, you're on the block, you know, in the summertime, you know, you rarely are outside, you know, and I just came back from, it's dark outside. I went to the store, I walked to the store as I often do. And I walked back and I was just looking around at the sky and I'm still in awe of everything out here. And people is just walking by me. And I know they just like, they don't even notice what I notice because they take it for granted. And if you once you're in a place where you can't see the sky at nighttime, whereas though you can't breathe in the air at nighttime air, and you don't, it's something that's missing. You know, they took a whole time of day from you.
Wow. How about you, Dennis?
And if I can add to that, seeing children, goodness, I mean, seeing kids, just, you know, being able, and you know, like Lee said, you know, not being able to be out at night, but not being able to see the sun rise in the morning, you know what I mean? And not being able to see children. You know, I mean, there's something to be said, you know, when you in a place and you just can't see any children, you just, you know, you don't see life really forming. And kids are a part of that.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people think about that when they think about what prisoners are denied. That's so true.
And let me say this, we have 1,000 other things that we're not going to bring up today, but there's a whole lot of things.
There's a whole lot of things.
That's at the top of my list, you know, going outside, being in the dark, not being seen. Those are at the top of my list.
Fascinating. Okay, speaking of kids, so what does your second chance? So that's what your second chance meant to you. What has your second chance meant to your family? And Lee, I know you've got kids. Do you want to talk a little bit about your kids? How old were they when you went in, and how old are they now? And what's that like?
Well, all of my kids were under 6 years old when I went in. They were under 5 years old when I went in. There's 5 on down. You know, I had a week-old child when I went to prison. Wow. He is now 28. I have a daughter that's 30. I have a son that's 32, and I have a son that's 34. You know, and I mean, it means everything. You know, I'm home, and my daughter lives with me. I have my granddaughter with me. I see my grandkids regularly. I see my sons regularly. When I first came home, I lived with one of my sons. I was out here to do something that one thing I've done with him, I taught him how to drive, you know, and then I went with him to get his license. And that was something that,
was it nerve-wracking?
It was nerve-wracking, but at the same time, it was a joyous occasion for me. Yeah. It was fulfilling. It made me feel like I didn't miss a beat. And, you know, I have conversations with my children, but me being home, I've seen that it's causing a process of healing in them, especially my daughter, who I was extremely close to when I went to prison, and that closeness have not gone, and she just loves to be around me. You know, we don't have to be in the same room. It's just the fact that we're in the house together. Yeah. And, you know, and then she calls me on the phone, and she, you know, even though she calls me from her room on the phone, I ain't gonna get that one yet. Because I just got out here. I didn't just get up and walk down the hallway. But that's for another story. But you know, the fact that I'm home and I could be with her and we can go places, and I can't, you know, and I can't help doing things for them, you know. And now that they have a father, to be out here to do things for them.
So, and how old's you said you have a granddaughter?
Just turned 9 years old.
Oh, she's got a granddaddy now. That's great.
Yeah. She calls me Pop, and she, you know, and I don't, and anything she wants, I always give out. You know, I spoil her. And, you know, even though I try to be hard, I'm never really hard.
That's the job description, granddad.
The only thing I'm strict with her about is we have 2 cats. And she wanted to bring another cat, and we have 2 cats now. And I said, well, you're gonna have to help clean that litter box out. And so that's the only thing and every time I tell her, she always give me this look. So every once in a while, I'll clean it out. I clean it. I clean it out most of the time.
Yeah, you're a softie. I can tell. Dennis, how about you? What's family like been for you since you're back?
Let me just say this. My siblings. It's so good to just see them when we want to see them. You know what I mean? It's so wonderful. Lee talked about, we lost our mom prior to coming out, but we still have our father, and we see him. There's just a joy to see him, and just for him to come. He lives in another state, so when he comes, he'll come and stay with me, or he'll come stay with Lee, and we'll spend time together. And if he's over here, we'll go to drive to Lee's house so we can visit with them, and then we'll hang out, together. So that's a joy to be with my father and be with. I have a twin. Most people didn't know that. I have a twin sister named Denise. And she's so overjoyed, and I'm overjoyed, because it was like a connection that was broken.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we've since come back, and just I'm involved in her life. I'm involved in my older sister's life. I get it's like Lee said, see all my nieces and nephews, and I'm engaged to be married, and I'll be married probably. Not probably. We got a date, and we've venued and everything. So I'll be married this early this summer. And I'm who knows? I'm not, I'm a little older, but I'm not, you never know what may happen after we get married. So,
you
we
never
may have
know.
kids, you never know. And then that'll be a wonderful thing,
I see it. I sort of have this vision of the two of you back with your family. And how many siblings is it all together?
So it's what, five siblings.
Five
besides
siblings.
Lee.
Yeah, and you're so wise, and I bet you're a real shoulder. Both of you are real shoulders for them to lean on, and a support to them. Which
we love them all, and we're so happy to just be a part of their life on a regular basis. And I think that is something that we missed also.
Yeah,
what I mean, and I'm so happy to be a part of, and just see all of them whenever we went to, because it's very difficult when you are imprisoned and they have you 2 and 3 or 4 hours away from your home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's very difficult for people who work hard every day to travel to places like that.
Yeah, expensive.
It's very expensive.
Yeah. Okay, so now I want to move on. So impact on you, impact on your family, impact on community. And this, you guys have already talked about this, and really, you're the poster children almost for having a positive impact on your family since you got out. I mean, the things that you've done and already talked about, but just sort of more personally about that question, what gets you up in the morning in terms of your community?
Well, I mean, what gets me up in the morning is believing that I can actually make a difference somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's what actually gets me up. I mean, I'm just gonna say, other than being free, freedom gets me up every single morning. I get up. I'm up early. I don't even try to stay asleep. I just love to be up. I love to step out on my porch and look around. And I'm already thinking of ways how this summer, for where I live at now, how I'm gonna be involved in the community. And thinking of all the things that I thought about, like so many other people in prison, I know they do think about, because we've had these conversations with them, what they can do and how they can give back to their communities once they are able to get free. And like I said, I get up every morning thinking I can make a difference, thinking of ways to actually be a part of solutions, and and how and who to interact with to actually make things happen. So that's one of my, and thinking about the future of how I will be involved. And I'm the person that sees the glass half full. And I always believe that I don't believe in, like people say, we want to reduce violence. I believe that we don't want to reduce it. We want to stop it. I believe that we don't want to get few more clemencies through the border parties. We want to get it to be free flowing, so that there's no criteria and people can just actually get clemency as much as they can get parole. So I don't see obstacles.
Interesting. Okay, Dennis, in terms of your community, you were part of a much bigger community very recently last week when you were Senator John Fetterman's guest at President Biden's State of the Union address. Do you want to talk about what that felt like and what the after effects were, and tell us how it was.
First of all, let me just say this. I was honored, that Senator Fetterman, asked me to, to accompany him to the State of the Union. I mean, it was so surreal because Lee and I, believe it or not, and I just want most people to this.
Okay.
You have a lot of men and women who are on the inside that follows politics regularly, that organizes regularly, organizes their families to get out and make sure they vote. That we watched the State of the Union, believe it or not, for 28 years straight.
Every year.
It's a State of the Union because we understand this is our president opportunity to talk about what is his vision and his plan for our country. You know what I mean? And we were just as dialed in and just as engaged. So, so it meant, the world to me. And it was so special because here I am, I've served 28 years in prison, and to go from a prison cell to sitting, in these walls, you know what I mean, where, these powerful people are making decisions based on, on people's lives. You know what I mean? So to be there to watch, it was just to see President Biden, give the speech in his vision for the country it was a special thing. And just to see Kamala Harris, as the first African American vice president, I mean, that was special. I didn't, Lee and I didn't make it out here to see President Obama, but we did, make it out here to see Vice President Kamala Harris. It was a beautiful thing, and just to see all the different politicians and senators that we admire, and we definitely admire John, and we respect him, and we know that he's going to make a wonderful senator. Of course, for the state of Pennsylvania, and also for the country.
Oh, that's great. That's great. We were so happy for you when we heard that news.
And I was just so honored and humbled and so grateful and just thankful. And that's it. And let me just say this, to me, that sent, a message to the country that people, who make mistakes and come back out in our society should be afforded, every opportunity to participate in the political process and in any civil process that's happening within our society, so they can live up to their fullest potential. That's what we should always want. You know what I mean? We shouldn't want to limit anybody because, the more opportunity they have, the better they're going to do. So,
you showed that in a very public, great way. So congratulations. Lee, I don't know if everybody knows, I'm sure everybody doesn't know, but you are a very accomplished poet. And I know you have a poem called The Future. And since we're talking about second chances in community here, I was hoping maybe you could read it.
Okay.
And while you're at it,
did you write it in prison?
Well, let me just say this. I actually wrote this poem in prison. I wrote it for something we call A Day of Responsibility. We wrote a play, and the play was called, I think, Chasing Midnight Shadows, and somebody recited this poem within that play. And the play was kind of about it wasn't our story, but at the end of the day, it was about people going through a system and coming out on the other side to find some sort of redemption or some sort of freedom. And this individual, when I wrote this poem was meant to show the prison population who was going to attend it and others who came to attend it that, nothing is actually done. We have the ability to change what we see as our future. It was like the future is what you make it. It belongs to us. So you want me to do it now?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I don't have it memorized, so I'm going to read it. And
fine.
So it goes like this. The future. The future. The clock of existence ticks, collapsing time into the folds of history. As the world turns, moments melt into days unseen. The sun rises again and again, inviting hearts to beat, lungs to breathe, life to begin. The future is life, streaming, Every breath is a womb conceiving possibility, giving birth to opportunity, creating destiny. The future is a threshold over which all must cross. It is a doorway through which all must enter, over which hangs a sign, none may come alone. All must come together. The future accepts everyone as equals. It has no favorites, no lessers, no graders, no allies, no enemies. The future is an ageless beginning, full of gifts without limits. It is a genie in a bottle. Whatever we ask of it, it gives freely, without judgment or question or expectation. All the future asks of us is to be who or what or how we want to be or not to be. The future is never yet made. It is what we make it. For all who will attend the banquet of life, the future has reserved you a table. There's no cover charge. You need only show up on time to claim your portion, because the future never waits for anyone. So don't be late. Take your seat. Be on time. Make the future yours. It belongs to you. Future.
Woo, Lee, thank you. That's really beautiful. I was really struck by so much of that. Also, I like the part about, especially the part about the sign over the future that says "No one comes here alone" or something like that.
Over which hangs a sign that says says alone none may pass.
Alone none may pass.
All must come together.
All must come together. So that reminds me of something else I heard you say. You have said freedom is responsibility, which is different to me than you hear a lot of people say, with freedom comes responsibility. You say freedom is responsibility. So can you talk a little bit about that? And you too, Dennis, if it looks like you're nodding your head.
Well, and his name is Freedom. So, he definitely have to say something about it. But I think freedom is responsibility. Freedom is what comes with freedom is obligation. Not just obligation to a person or anybody. People sometimes, I think, look at freedom from a selfish point of view. It's all about the individual. But I don't think freedom is just about me. I think it's about me being a part of the whole society. And as someone who's a part of this society, I have a responsibility to this society, to everyone in it, as well as to myself, to my family, to my neighborhood, to my city, to my community, to all the people I left behind. That's why we came home and we are active. And my phone never stops ringing because I don't deny people access to me. Mm-hmm. I believe that's a part of my responsibility. Mm-hmm. I was there. I know what they're going through. Mm-hmm. I was them. I wanted somebody to do something for me. Now that I'm free, I'm responsible now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I can't just walk away from that. Mm-hmm. And that's why I say freedom is responsibility for everybody to participate.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. How about you, Dennis?
Let me just say this, similar to Lee, I want to take a different approach in how I talk about freedom, because, I believe that I owe a duty, to be a part of, trying to solve some of the tough and challenging issues that face our city, our nation, or wherever I'm called to, and wherever I can get in there to try to make a difference. Mm-hmm. This is why Lee talked about earlier, us working with different community centers, trying to make a difference in young people's lives, that, to help them avoid a lot of the pitfalls that we saw when we were in prison. We saw a lot of young men coming to prison, making, mistakes and, finding themselves, there. But I just want to say this: we have so many, juvenile lifers and commuted lifers that have come back out here into our society, You know what I mean? And particularly, I can speak to Philadelphia and the surrounding areas of Pennsylvania, like Harrisburg and Pittsburgh and other places that are making a huge impact. You know, I'm gonna be honest with you, you know, and I think this is kind of what's been missing, you know, in this whole ingredients of, you know, what we see out here in our society with the violence and crime and things like that. You have no witnesses coming back to have the conversation with the young people or the people out here that's committing the crimes and committing the violence, to help them to see that this is what you face if you know, if you don't change and turn away from your ways.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now that, yes. So I just wanted to share.
Very good point. Very good point. We only have like 2 more minutes, and I really want to get from both of you to keep the momentum going with commutation and, you know, the work that we're doing. Can you say something directly to the new current lieutenant governor, the new Lieutenant Governor, Austin Davis, about keeping clemency going? Why don't you start, Lee? Just make it like, you know, under a minute, because we have not very much time.
All right. What I would want to say to him is, let's make history. Let's create the most fairest, the most just system that we can when it comes to clemency, and the most empathetic system. I mean, he has the opportunity to do this. The previous administrations, they started the pace. Now let's up that pace. Because he has the opportunity to do what I consider is right, you know, to allow people who are deserving of a second chance to actually have that second chance, you know. And the only way to do that is if he continues to do what the previous administration did. I think 53 people came out last time. Let's this year, let's get that up to 100 and something if we can.
Great, Lee.
And if I can add to that with Lee, I would say, listen, you know, to the Lieutenant Governor, you know, who we know well, who's Austin Davis. You know, I would say we need to figure out a way. Well, not figure out a way. Many of us have, you know, a lot of, you know, the answers and solutions to streamlining our system so we can get more people through. We were there with men, many of men, you know, and I'm sure women as well, these people are, you know, they are not the individuals they were when they went to prison. These folks have been in prison 30, 40, 50 years. They are the mentors in prison. They are the ones that keep the prison safe. The reason why we have some of the safest prisons in the state of Pennsylvania, and you don't hear about officers getting killed every other week or getting stabbed every other week, is because of men and women like this that are, you know, doing wonderful work behind those walls and those gates, you know what I mean, and helping to send a lot of short timers back home better people. Believe me when I say they're there, and we need them out here in our community to help continue to make our community safer with the ones who already came out. We have the evidence. The evidence is who? Us and so many countless others that are out here that was once lifers, commuted or juvenile lifers, and they're doing unbelievable work in the community. Listen, there's so many more that will come out and do no different.
And I only want to add one word to what he said. I want to add one word to what he said. Amen.
I agree. Excellent points. You two are just amazing. I'm so glad you're home free. I'm so glad you're working at everything you are. Your work is incredible. And, you know, FAMM is very lucky to have you come on this show and be with us and beside us in our work for second chances, and everything you just said, exactly what Lee said. Amen. So I'm really grateful. Thank you for being here with us tonight. It's meant so much, and it's been a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.